Baum Chevrolet Buick, your full-service dealer. See us at baumchevybuick.com right from the start.
Hi, this is Nate Sams, Vice President and Loan Officer at Longview Community Bank, and I'm inviting you to our grand opening celebration this Friday from 10 to 3 at our new Clinton location. We'll have lunch from 11 to 2, free Dairy Queen ice cream, a flag dedication at noon, and a special program featuring local leaders, plus a ribbon cutting and photos out front. Come join the celebration at Longview Community Bank in Clinton, investing in rural Illinois, member FDIC.
Breathing problems can affect every aspect of your life. Breathe easier with Gibson Area Hospital Pulmonology Clinic and Dr. Ismail Bobat, now providing pulmonology health services to DeWitt County at Warner Hospital in Clinton. Dr. Bobat is an expert at identifying and treating pulmonology health conditions. Get the right diagnosis and treatment for your breathing problem with an experienced pulmonologist. For healthier breathing, book an appointment in Clinton today. Call 217-784-2212.
There's a reason WHOW is the Big 1520 across central Illinois. That's because anytime the sun is up, you can hear WHOW's big signal from Jacksonville to Peoria, from Pontiac to the Indiana state line, and to Charleston and Effingham. Anywhere you travel in central Illinois, take WHOW, the Big 1520, with you in your car, truck, or tractor. Just another reason why WHOW is Central Illinois' news, agriculture, and talk station.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. Brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio today, Reagan Tibbs with the University of Illinois Extension in Logan, Menard, and Sangamon counties. And Reagan, first of all, welcome to the Big Red Barn. Thanks for making the trip over, man.
Absolutely happy to do so. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Appreciate you making the trip, and glad to have you in. And I know the last couple of visits with you, we have been highlighting a new program you are introducing for young farmers and people looking to get into farming. Let's start there today.
Yeah, the Farm Business Foundations program, that's something that I've held really personal to me, as somebody who's going to, inherit our family farms and working on our family farm forever. Just trying to have those resources there for, like you said, people who might be young and taking over their family farm, or someone who's starting a new farming operation altogether. Just having those resources and those educational opportunities for them to learn those important basics.
Sure. Well, let's dive into, first of all, registration. The deadline is next week, from what I understand.
Yep. We're going to move it to next Friday, June the 6th.
All right. So June 6th is registration deadline. What do folks need to know about registration? The program itself, is it a series? Is it just like a seminar? What's it look like?
Yeah, so it's going to be 3 different sessions across June. So the first one's going to be on June 10th, and that's going to be at our Sangamon County Extension office in Springfield. That session is going to talk about kind of what is farm business management, why is it important, how to create a business plan. The second session is going to be the week after that on June 17th at the Farm Credit office in Sherman. Really excited for that partnership with them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to share some things about kind of loans, how to, what's that process like? What are some frequently asked questions and things that people need to know about that?
Mm-hmm.
We'll also talk about some marketing strategies and things to consider on that front. And then the last session will be on June 24th at the Sangamon County Farm Bureau office in Springfield. And that's going to focus on succession planning. So
Mm-hmm.
what are those conversations you need to have? What are the things you need to have in order to have a successful succession plan?
You're visiting us in Clinton. Let's say there's a producer in maybe Clinton, maybe Macon County,
Mm-hmm.
Menard,
Sure.
these counties that are accessible to Springfield, but they're not a part of that 3-county area you're in. Do you have to be a part of this?
Absolutely not. No, anybody is more than welcome to come attend any program, not just for me or anywhere in Extension. We have a lot of in-person programs. We also have a lot of online programs and asynchronous programs as well. So absolutely not. You do not have to be part of Logan, Menard, or Sangamon counties to attend. Anybody from any part of the state could come down and participate.
Gotcha. So now, from what I was talking with Terry Miller Casey a few weeks ago about this program, and one thing that maybe you had mentioned it and I didn't catch it, but she had clued me into, you don't necessarily have to be a part of all three to be a part of this program. You can register for each individual session.
Absolutely, that's right. Yeah, they can, registrants can, pick just one session or two sessions or come to all three. It doesn't matter because, I recognize that some people may only want to hear about the succession planning topic, or they may or really only be interested in one of those sessions. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that anybody can come and access whichever ones they want. So absolutely, they can register for as many as they'd like.
Very good. So now let's dive into each session and maybe kind of more specifically what is going to be talked about. Are you crafting this curriculum? Are you relying on the people presenting? Speak to some of those things.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix of both. This is a new program that we have in extension, so not a lot of curriculum to go off of, but working with our presenters, like I said, we have some amazing partners with Farm Credit in Sherman there. Also, the Menard and Sangamon County Farm Bureaus have been massive helps in this as well, and offering their spaces and their resources. So, a lot of the program is kind of getting put together by myself, especially that first session where we're talking about kind of what is farm business management, what are some things people need to consider with that, relying on my experience with my degrees and also the resources I've used across the years to help people answer those types of questions. Gotcha. So a lot of that is kind of getting built and listening to what kind of people are wanting. These sessions were built not just off of a women and idea that I got, but at conversations I had with producers across the area here and things that they would find interesting.
Speak more to that, if you will, that process for you to put this together.
Yeah. It's hard to believe I've been here over a year and a half now. I mean,
wow.
it seems like it's gone by really quickly, but having those conversations with producers about the topics they want to hear about, the things they want to learn about, what resources can we offer through extension, or do we have in kind of our network of other extensions across the Midwest and across the country that we can then bring forward and offer those producers? Because, Illinois Extension, we have a lot of great resources, a lot of great programs, but we definitely want to, key in other states and other resources that are just as excellent and just as resourceful for our producers. Gotcha.
So where did you start in terms of, and I venture a guess probably the starting point is easy, the basics, get the basics down, then branching out from there. How did you decide, how many sessions, what do we cover? What are the most important topics to somebody? What do we leave out probably? Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. When you talk about kind of farm business management, like taking over the farm, the biggest topic that comes up is succession planning. Okay. That's one of the things that people always talk about, and having a plan for the future. The average age of the American farmer isn't getting any younger. And so having those plans in place to ensure that those farmers can pass on their farm successfully if they want to. So that was one of the key things. And, we could try to fit this all into one session, but that's going to take like 4 hours on one night. And I don't think anybody's willing to sit through a 4-hour session on this. So breaking it up that way, keeping each session at an hour and a half maximum, it's accessible to people. They don't have to spend all night, and again, they can come to whichever one they want to. If we did it all in one session, they'd have to sit there and listen to every bit of it. They may not be interested in. So having it in this multi-session format allows people to have flexibility to hear what they want to.
What are you looking forward to most about this program?
Just the connections and kind of getting it started. Since I've created this and brought it up to the rest of our team and extension, a lot of other people have said, yes, we want to see if this program works and adapted in their counties as well. And that's the thing is, next year when this program is offered, maybe we decide to change the topics up or change the order. Maybe we do succession planning first or whatever. This program is not going to be just, this is the way it's always going to have to be. And then trying to ensure that this program can meet the needs of where we're at currently.
One thing I wanted to ask Reagan was, I know with a lot of extension programs, pardon me, they are recorded like YouTube or something like that. Sure. and posted to maybe the website. Will this be one of those?
I haven't really decided on that yet, Seth. Quite frankly, I think what's definitely going to happen is there are going to be materials that attendees will get. So they'll get like our PowerPoint slides and any other handouts. If anything, we might make those available on our website. But as a recording, I haven't really decided yet. And my kind of thought on that is, if someone is wanting to attend but can't, and want that option, we can work that out if we need to. But right now, definitely, there's going to be materials that all of our attendees will get. And we'll probably have those online at some point.
Easy enough. Very good. Well, one more time, registration is coming up. When do the sessions start? Just kind of run through the basics one more time.
Yep. So our 3 sessions, our first session is on June 10th. The second is on June 17th. And the third and final is on June 24th. Each session will start at 5:30 and go until 7 o'clock. Each session also costs $10. Okay. And the registration for that is go.illinois.edu/2025 farm business foundations.
All right, very good. So check that out. And that registration deadline is June 6th,
Yeah,
correct?
June 6th at the end of the day.
All right, so a week from today. I can't believe it's Friday already, Reagan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've lost track of time this week for some reason. Very good. Reagan Tibbs, University of Illinois Extension educator, our guest in studio this morning with the University of Illinois Extension in Logan Menard and Sangamon counties. Reagan, let's dive into the topic of dust storms. I know we were catching up before the break that, you're significantly younger than me, but I was remembering, back when I was in like high school and college, and like you start to pay attention to the weather more at that point in your life. And I don't remember dust storms. And here we are. We see them multiple times a summer, multiple times a year. What's going on? You're taking a look at this.
Yeah, that's something that we remember a couple years ago. We had that tragic accident there on Interstate 55, which, unfortunately people lost their lives in that. And I think that raised the public awareness when it comes to dust storms and erosion and more broadly. And so, one of the things that starting last year, there was another dust storm that impacted right near my home in Logan County. So I started working on trying to understand what topics and what practices can farmers adopt to help prevent soil erosion and the loss of that soil, right? Because agriculture is all about soil. If we don't have healthy soils, we don't have soil at all, then we won't have the proper nutrients and a good crop every year. So if we can protect our soils and also in turn protect our land, that'll be a benefit for the long term. And so, I wrote a blog about it last year, and out of that has come some pretty important discussions on soil erosion and dust storms.
And so, tell me more about those conversations. Where did that go?
Yeah. So last year, after I wrote that blog, the National Weather Service office over in Lincoln reached out to me, and they wanted to get an understanding more broadly of how how soil erosion and agriculture, kind of what's that interaction look like? What type of practices can farmers adopt to reduce soil erosion? And one of the things that I mentioned to them, and I've said repeatedly, is that one practice is not the fix-all solution, right? It's a combination of practices together that can help reduce that. Obviously one of the big ones that people talk about is cover crops, and we've heard a lot about cover crops over the last few years, and those certainly help, but you have to pick the right species of cover crop, the right type of cover crop, which can really ensure the protection of the soil as much as possible. Also things like considering minimal tillage or no tillage at all. Those all come with their own side effects, but just considering those as a way to try and keep the soil where it is and protect it against soil erosion.
Yeah. So when one thing you had brought up, and I'm curious, wind block is a prominent piece. Is there less of that now than there was 15, 20 years ago?
So I'm going to go on a nerd rant for a little bit here, so forgive me.
Please do.
So back in the 60s, there was a thought by the federal government that, we need to farm fence row to fence row, right? Try to maximize our production to produce as much as possible. And that meant that a lot of the times, a lot of these fence rows and hedgerows and tree lines were taken out to ensure that we can farm fence row to fence row and farm as much land as possible. Now that in theory might sound good. We obviously want to produce as much as possible so that we have enough to consume domestically and internationally. But the downside to that has been, well, now there's nothing to block any wind. Right. So we can go miles and miles and miles with nothing in the way to stop the wind from picking up soil, or even if soil particles do get picked up, there's nothing there to stop them from going and carrying on any farther. So that's been one of the things that obviously it's a tough conversation to have. And, when these places haven't had wind blocks for decades now, at some point, getting those started, it's a bit complicated.
So has that deteriorated to the point where that has resulted in what we're seeing the last several years now?
I don't think it's helped. If anything, I think definitely, we see instances like, a couple weeks ago, when we had the one that impacted, Logan County, Bloomington, all the way up to Chicago. I was coming home, and just outside of Elkhart, I saw one kicking up. And from that field, from that vantage point, I could see at least 5 miles straight ahead of me without anything in the way. That's a lot. And that allows that wind to really pick up speed and really pick up those particles and move them and cause those large dust clouds. So
Gotcha.
Definitely that can have an impact. But like I said, it's not a one size fits all solution. Right? You can't just say, I'm going to put in wind block and refine. There has to be a combination of practices in order to make it work effectively.
You've also worked with the National Weather Service on this.
Yeah. That, again, one thing, like I said, they've really wanted to learn kind of how agricultural practices can impact soil erosion. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is that, they've been very open and honest and asked some really good questions, and they've kind of changed their language about how they describe that to the public when they put out their dust storm advisories or their blowing dust advisories. Ensuring that they're using the proper language so that people will understand what they're talking about, and they can also kind of better predict when these are going to happen. Starting basically in March all the way through till even now, I've been reaching out to them pretty frequently about, hey, here's the conditions we're looking at. You might want to consider, if winds are going to be high, putting something out there just so people are aware of it.
How long have you been looking at this?
So I remember when that storm impacted I-55 and those people lost their lives. So really kind of then I had an interest in it. And then when I started here and had that dust storm that happened last spring that went right by my house in Logan County, that's when I decided to write that blog post about it and really kind of start discussing it.
Is there anything you in studying this that comes to mind for you that has been the biggest factor in the increase in dust storms the last several years?
Well, so the Weather Service asked me one time, are the conditions getting worse? Are we seeing more erosion now than ever? And I'm not a soil scientist. I'm not a, geologist or whatever. So I can't speak to that. But I will say is that, we aren't seeing things slowing down. We haven't seen a lot of changes to our practices that could impact that. And I think, we need to have those conversations. They're not easy conversations to have, right? Sometimes producers, say, well, cover crops may not work on this field, and that might be true. But at least having those conversations and considering what practices we need to offer, that's been, at least starting those conversations, that's been the biggest thing for me.
I know you said there's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a solution that you have found that would be the best practice to consider?
It's just such a field by field, thing. Obviously, like I said, cover crops is a big thing that people consider. But again, with cover crops, you have to consider has to be the right variety and the right species of cover crops, right? We can't just say, oh, I'm going to go out there and sow winter wheat and call it good. There has to be some sort of consideration as to maybe do I want more of a, winter wheat's a grassy type of cover crop? Do I want that has more broad leaves, that has better ground coverage? And then with cover crops, you have to consider the nutrient availability as well. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. So yeah, it's just such a field by field situation. You can't just make a broad assumption that, put a cover crop in there and that'll work.
Well, and I also wonder if, we've seen the advent of early plant soybeans, like that's become really popular. I wonder if the earlier that tillage work gets started, if that's, I don't know. Is there something there you think?
Maybe. And that's the thing is, people talk about, no-till and minimal till, those ways to go. Not necessarily, because you have to think too, like we discussed last time with black cutworm, they tend to like fields that have a lot of field residue in them, right? So there are often times when no-till, minimal till aren't the best solutions for those fields either. So again, it's just considering kind of the totality of the circumstances there at that field at that time and seeing what practice can be adopted to prevent it.
Yeah, producers are largely aware of the impact they have on the community and the world around them. But I'm wondering, is this an issue that farmers are taking note of, and they're like, what can I do to help in this effort?
I definitely think so. The conversations I've had, people are like, we want to ensure that we are protecting our soil, because that's the thing is, if we lose our soil, then we're going to lose those nutrients and lose our ability to produce the best crop in the world. And
right.
Protecting our soil is the biggest thing that farmers want to do, and they're willing to consider those practices, whatever they may be, to protect it.
And the other side of that is, I don't think they want to be a detriment to the traffic of the travel of people. They don't want to make people alter their plans and have to make them wait and those sorts of things.
Absolutely. The dust storm we had a couple weeks ago, there wasn't any field activity going on.
Right.
So that's the thing is, like, at some point, farmers aren't going out there causing this, right? That was one thing we heard, after that accident I-55 a couple of years ago. No one's doing that. No farmer's going out there and trying to do that. It's just, we have to be conscious of our practice and conscious of the weather conditions around us.
Reagan, let's take a break here, my friend. Come back with some more Reagan Tibbs, University of Illinois Extension, our guest in studio. More to come with Reagan on the morning show.
WHOW.
If your heart beats for the heartland, for the pace and rhythm of the life we enjoy here, you'll be relieved to know you're close to experts who can care for your heart if it falls out of rhythm or the pace is not what it should be. At Prairie Cardiovascular, our doctors have a passion for pursuing advances in care, for providing the right treatment at the right time, whatever your needs. When you choose Prairie Cardiovascular, you'll know your heart is in the right place.
Shane here from Highway 51 Exchange, just south of Clinton. Let us service your lawn and garden equipment for spring with our quick turnaround and service specials for free pickup and delivery. Click our icon on DeWittDailyNews.com for details.
Longview Community Bank provides real local ag lending. Vice President and Loan Officer Nate Sams here, asking you to find out the many ag lending products we can offer your farm by clicking our ad on the local news page of DeWittDailyNews.com.
Now there's one web portal for local agriculture radio programming in Central Illinois. IllinoisFarmRadio.com. Local farm programming streamed live and archived to hear anytime. IllinoisFarmRadio.com. Hear the morning and noon farm shows with local agriculture news and interviews. IllinoisFarmRadio.com. Plus hear all of your favorite agriculture farm shows, including RFD Illinois, AgriTalk, RFD Today, and the Closing Market Report. IllinoisFarmRadio.com. It's agriculture grown locally, streamed live, and archived to hear anytime. IllinoisFarmRadio.com. A service of the Miller Media Group.
DeWitt County's #1 source for local news is on the air and online 24 hours a day. The latest local news stories are heard every hour on Central Illinois' news station, the Big 1520 AM and 92.3 FM WHOW. Stream live at DeWittDailyNews.com. They're also heard every hour on the station that's your easy choice, 95.9 FM WEZC. And to read the latest local news on your electronic device, including tablets, iPhones, and smartphones, go to DeWittDailyNews.com. DeWitt County's #1 source for local news is on the air, online 24 hours a day.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Reagan Tibbs with the University of Illinois Extension in Logan, Menard, Sangamon counties made the trip over to join us today. Reagan, I know you've got a new blog post up. We talked about your blog post regarding wind and the dust storms and those sort of things. Also, it is hay harvest time. So how about this latest post for you?
Yeah, so on my blog, Farm Focus, the latest series I posted is about hay cutting, and especially now that a lot of producers are doing their first cutting of the year. I know we've done it on our farm already, but a lot of other hay producers across Central Illinois are starting their first cutting and getting their hay seasons underway. So just offering some tips and some things to consider as they start their first cutting to have a successful season.
Gotcha. So what are some of the things they should be considering this time of year?
Yeah, the first thing I talk about in the first part of the blog is kind of setting a schedule and the importance of having that, right? In weighing the forage quality, you know, how good of a crop do you want to have in terms of nutritional value to livestock or whatever you're feeding versus the stand vigor in the winter, right? So normally we can get 3 cuttings here in Central Illinois, and we're very fortunate to that. But we have to understand, you know, if we have longer cutting times, how's that going to impact the nutritional value to livestock, and how long is that are they going to have a successful stand over the winter? Because you want to have some regrowth before it winters and becomes dormant. So considering those things was really, you know, something I wanted to talk about and hit on.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of start from the end and work backwards, it sounds like.
Kind of, yeah. You kind of want to think about, okay, this is when I know kind of the last cutting is going to be, and think about the interval between cuttings, right? Do you want to have shorter intervals? You have longer intervals, considering all those factors putting in it together.
Gotcha. About a minute left. Anything else out of that post you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, second post that went out this morning talked about nutrition, nutrient replacement with hay crops, and also proper storage, you know, having the right storage for it to ensure that they are continue to hold their nutritional quality.
Very good. Reagan, wrap us up with, again, your seminar, your series coming up for young farmers, and tell us kind of the deadline for registration and all the ins and outs of that.
Yep, registration closes next Friday, June 6th at the end of the day. Each session is going to cost $10, and the registration link is go.illinois.edu/2025 Farm Business Foundations.
And those kick off on June
10th, 17th, and 24th.
Very good. Reagan, good to see you, man. Thanks for making the trip over.
Thanks for having me, Seth.
Absolutely. Reagan Tibbs, University of Illinois Extension, our guest in studio here for this morning. Again, the morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. We stream live online all the time at DeWittDailyNews.com. Network news comes your way next on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.